Welcome to the 40 to 40 podcast. Join me, your host John Weiser, as I explore life 40 degrees south of the equator.
Welcome to the 40 to 40 podcast. Thank you for joining me. Sorry for having a skip for the past couple of weeks. I was with a cold last week and then I was in Brazil the week before. But next week I'll have a chance to talk about my trip to Brazil and some of the importations between Brazil and Argentina, as is an interesting history between the two cultures as well. But thank you for joining me. Quick reminder, feel free to follow the podcast on Instagram, listen on YouTube, and then listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and watch on YouTube. Just a quick homework before we get started. So the topic today is libertarian thought in Argentina. My own personal experience with libertarianism more or less started maybe in 2021 or 2022 when I was reading a book on Mao's Great Famine. And what terrified me about the idea of Mao's Great Famine was that one person, whether or not he was smart or whether he was unintelligent or whether he had good intentions or bad intentions, one person, when they put themselves in a place where they have all the power over millions of people and they have no way to get feedback or receive feedback, can make a mistake, even if it's an innocent mistake, that can have negative effect on the millions of people. So estimates range between like 20 and 60 million excess deaths that happened in China due to Mao's famine from centralized planning and from the inability to challenge authority. And so when I looked at that, I think I was motivated by the ideas of taking away centralized power and giving power to the individual and promoting liberty for the individual, which kind of led me into listening to the Tom Woods show. My brother gave me some reading homeworks. I read the Autonomy of the State by Rothbard, and then I really enjoyed reading The Constitution of Liberty by Hayek. And so I started to realize, there's some really good thought out there from economists and from political thought leaders over the past 100 years, 150 years, about this idea of even more for classic liberalism and the libertarian movement, Austrian economics. And so there's a whole area, a whole train of thought that I had no exposure to. And I think for my own ignorance, when I heard libertarianism for the past, let's say 20 years, I just thought that meant liberalizing marijuana for college students, essentially. And so I had a very naive understanding of what it was to fight for classic liberties, for liberalism, and fighting for individual liberties. And what's been really interesting about what's happened in Argentina is libertarianism went from being a relatively small academic topic to being something that's mainstream, that 30% of the population of Argentina voted in the first round of the election for a libertarian candidate. So a massive change in thought across the popular thought across the country. So today's guest, I first heard of him on the Tom Woods show, actually, and then I ran into his articles on the Mises Wire, and he was very quick to respond and be helpful. So Octavio Bermudez, thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, excellent. And I hope you could be able to decipher what's happened here in Argentina and from your perspective, why you think there has been able to make such a massive change in the general thought in a relatively short amount of time.
Well, the Milei phenomenon is quite interesting because no one saw it coming. Now, if you looked at Milei when he was on TV or in the small gatherings that were happening in 2020, 2021, and few said this is something. Few said this is for real. And I was one of the people that gathered in those went in those gatherings. That's where I met Milei, and very few people. I was more into it because of passion, because I had discovered the ideas of liberty, and I was very enthusiastic about it. And I saw that Milei represented those ideas, and he was starting his political career. So I wanted to support. So no one saw this coming, and why they didn't saw it coming? Because no one had the right diagnosis for what was going on in Argentinian society. Argentinian society was basically tired of all the same narrative for so many years you know that in Argentina, for at least the last 40 years, the paradigm in which people talked was always within a status. Like, it was not what the state should not or should do, but what the state should do in which area, right?
Right.
So they said, okay, the state should do something in education, or do something in healthcare, do something in public works. So that's what the debate. Where should the state intervention be instead of should is the intervention intelligent from the get go? So Millet started to debate all of that, to say, well, it's not about where do we place the intervention, but the intervention itself. So it's the role of the state to actually move forward and intervene more, or is to retreat and have a and let the people do their own self management. So what I say in sorry for quoting myself, but in one of my articles I say that the progressives have taken their supporters into such an extreme economic situation and also social situation that the dogmatism of progress have, has been turned into a principle of reality, like it's called in psychology. Like, people no longer based on these abstract ideas of justice and equality. They look at their balance sheet every month and they say, I cannot make it to the end of the month.
Right.
So, and
Right.
a lot of them fall into poverty or so.
So if I could back up a little bit, what was your own personal development in libertarian thought? How old were you? What year was it? And why were you in a position that you were learning about the classic liberal figures?
So that was back in 2020.
Okay.
And I had been listening to Millet for a long time by then, but I didn't give him like much of serious thought. Like, I thought he was just one of those crazy economists that talks on TV.
Right.
And but he quoted two people, two scholars that really stuck in my mind. Those were Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek. And when I heard those names, I looked it up on the internet, and they were Nobel Prize winners of economics. And I said, oh wow, there are serious people that have won a Nobel Prize that are talking about the free market. It's not about just crazy people.
Right.
Eh, and I took it from that time. I took it seriously. So, and I started first. I watched interviews on the internet with Hayek and with Milton, and very enlightening, very good. There's a series called Free to Choose by Milton Friedman that for people that are just getting into classical liberal thought or libertarianism, it's very good. It's on YouTube. And so there's also the book that he made, the series, TV series, and the book. I have the book as well. That's the first book I read on libertarianism. And that book convinced me. Like, it got me into libertarian thought. And from that moment on, I followed the footnotes, my book, the books that they cited, all of that. And I gradually gravitated towards Austrian economics and what we call Austrian libertarianism. That's basically libertarianism from an Austrian school perspective.
Right.
And I gravitated towards that, following mostly what Hayek had said. I was a bit of what we call a Friedmanite for some months. But then the arguments of Hayek, Mises, and Rothbard convinced me of another point of view in libertarianism.
And so I think something that has been 100% clear to me: libertarian movement can really be a political movement, and it can shape your policies and your perspective on what the government should do. But the economics that are associated with the libertarian movement, do they have to be Austrian economics, or can you also be consider the Chicago School of Economics and still follow libertarian thought as well?
Oh, that's a good question. What I have to say is that you don't have to follow Austrian economics to be a libertarian. And you don't have to follow Chicago's economics to be a libertarian, because libertarianism is a philosophy of law. It is it is basically telling you when something is legal and when something is illegal. So when something is illegal, there's no liberty, and when something is legal, there's liberty. So
Right.
uh, you don't have to follow any specific economic doctrine to be libertarian, and you don't have to, behave in your life in a certain way to be a libertarian. You just gotta agree with the basic tenets of libertarianism, which are first of all, the principle of no aggression, the non-aggression principle, the NAP. Basically, don't aggress physically to anybody. Physically, also, it means to their person and to their property. That's the basic. If you believe in that, then you can start calling yourself a libertarian. It doesn't matter if you like Milton Friedman or Hayek, or you are more into the neoclassicals, maybe Robert Lucas Jr. It doesn't make you a libertarian. Like,
Right.
there are many people that like the Chicago school but are not libertarians. There are people that like the Chicago school and are libertarians.
Right.
So it doesn't.
Okay, I think
It's not constituted.
it's clarifying. And I think it's been one problem with the libertarian movement in the United States is that in the academic circles, it attracts a certain type of person who likes to fight about the minutia and the tiny details of, no, you're wrong, you can't call yourself this because of this. And what was really interesting about Milei is he somehow seemed to get past that with the Argentine people and get towards addressing like a common issue that was uniting instead of divisive. And I think the libertarian movement can be very internally divisive in the United States because of all the academic thought and all the precision and thought that can get in the way of creating a unity that there could be. So I guess my next question would be, this was very interesting to me. So you're really, the catalyst for your thought was really Milei himself that got you questioning about this whole field, which is incredible that was able to do that, not for yourself, but a lot of people. If you could describe then your own personal experience, was that similar to the experience of the 30% of Argentines who voted from him, from your perspective, or did it differ in some ways? The general development of being open to libertarian thought, the general development that happened, acceptance that happens for 30% of the Argentine people.
Well, here I agree with a couple of Argentinian sociologists that have studied the Milei movement, and how people come to support him. Basically, I think that there's a good part of these voters that they are not fully committed, libertarians, and know the doctrine, know the economics, and all of that. They just saw in him certain coherence, a certain discourse that made sense to them, and that was more reasonable than what the other candidates were offering. So that's like I'm not saying that this is most people or the majority, but I'm saying a good part of it. Others that heard the idea, heard the arguments, and said this is right. Others that went into reading into libertarianism, like me, but it's clear that the people that went and read libertarianism and the authors and the Austrian school, Chicago school, are the minority.
Okay.
So the majority saw in him reasonable proposals different from what all the other candidates have been offering for the past 4 years. So this connects with what I'm.
No, apologize.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and this connects with what you asked me at the beginning of the interview. That was that the people that voted for Milei previously voted for other center party or another, even almost left-wing parties, and now voted for Milei. What happened there?
Right.
Like, that tells you that most of the voters in Argentina, it's not ideological. Like, Argentina's political system is not divided into ideologies. or philosophy for that sense. It's not that classical liberals vote for classical liberals, socialists vote for socialists. It's more pragmatical in the way.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, and that makes sense. I think I heard a good analogy. I'm going to pronounce his name incorrectly, but the president of El Salvador, is it Bukele? Thank you. So he understood the primary pain point of the people of El Salvador, and he addressed it, and then he became very popular, right? And so I think that's where there's that pragmatic side of an Argentine, where it's like this guy is not talking about some topics that are mildly irrelevant. He's talking about the most important topic to me right now, which is that I cannot save for the future. And he's actually talking about it relatively clearly, and he's actually saying, like, in pragmatic terms, this is what I would do. And that was pretty attractive to a lot of Argentines, because I think Argentines, I talked about Argentine culture before, and I don't know if you know the song. It's an old song, Lo atamos con el hambre.
Oh yeah, I think I know.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, it's this idea of everything bad can happen in Argentina, but we'll be okay because we can fix it with wire, right? Like, it's just kind of like, there's just two sides to it. This side, like, oh, Argentina doesn't have what it takes to fix it the right way, the negative side, and the positive side, which is like, even if it's the wrong way, we'll at least find a pragmatic way to fix it, right? And I think that's what you're saying, is that pragmatism, which is like, hey, it sounds like this is a way we can at least try to fix it with wire, right? We at least can try to make it better. And so I think Milei, just like the president of El Salvador, addressed crime in a focused way. He understood the primary pain point, and that was like attractive for the pragmatic Argentine, right?
Yeah, Milei interpreted the social thought of the people, that what people were thinking, what people were worried about, what they were suffering. He saw that and said, okay, this is what's going on, the diagnosis. Here's me, that I'm going to change that, and here's how I'm going to change it. So I'm going to put this and put it here. I'm going to grab this and put it here. So that's what he said. He said, I know what you're suffering. I know how to fix it, and I have the will to fix it.
Yeah.
If he's gonna fix it or not, we're saying he's now in government. We are, by day, we're watching if he is doing it or not. But in campaign, that's what he said. He said, I know what you're suffering. Yes. I have the will to change it, and I know how to change it.
That's right. So. And that for me was like such a great strategy and communication campaign from a politician, because I think myself, and I think a lot of people in my generation, are quite tired of politicians who speak in like slogans and speaking points. One is like, I was watching the Republican primaries, and you get somebody up there is Pence, right? And he says something like,
"Yeah,
strength through power," and the crowd goes crazy. And it's like, what did you just say? Did you just say that we have to invest billions and billions of dollars forever in armament, or what does that mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, why are we cheering for that, right? So I get quite tired of like saying some phrase that's been said for 20, 30, 40 years and not telling me, what does that mean? What does that look like? How will you vote? How will you lead? And so I think that's where I was so attracted to the way that Milei was speaking, is because it was like, well, even if he's wrong, at least he's speaking clearly. So my next question for you is, I, as an outsider, is attracted to this. Why is it that more or less the Argentines who voted for the Conservative Party and not for Milei, why is it that he wasn't able to reach them? Why is it you think that certain people were holding on to, no, I got to vote Conservative Party?
So I feel like the party loyalty that characterizes some political parties. I am a Peronist, and I'm going to vote a Peronist, and I'm going to vote him in whoever presents. If he's in the Peronist party, I'm going to vote for him. That's fading away. People are living the extreme situation of economic downfall. So they are not they are not basing too much their voting behavior in their what they think in ideology files, because there's a lot of people that say, hey, I don't like a lot of things about Milei, but I'm gonna vote him because I'm not
Sure,
gonna vote for
sure.
the other one.
So for
The
example,
people that vote, yeah,
sorry, for example, I had a relative who told me that he read an article. I can't remember which magazine, but some famous magazine, that Milei was essentially some kind of conspiracy, that he was a tool of Christina, because what he was going to do when he dollarized the economy, Christina had millions of dollars that she had stolen, and that was going to allow her to wash them back legally into the economy. And so somehow he wasn't going to vote for Milei because there was some conspiracy that he was secretly bad. I mean, like, do you think that's all just a lot of garbage that was happening during the political election season to try to get people not to vote for him, or do you think there's any merit to conversations like that?
that's so crazy. It's nonsense. And I had met Milei personally. I've met people that work with him. He's not an agent of Christina or the Mossad or the CIA. Uh, he's a politician that now he's a politician. Back then he used to be just an economist. Now he's a politician that wants to be that is in power, wants to stay in power. Like all politicians, he has a power program. He's not there like, oh, I was just crossing the street and they told me, hey, what, you want to be president? And they put the ban on him and sat on the Rivadavia chair. Now, he may be dealing with Cristina now, maybe it can be. It's not that conspiranoid to think about that, okay? But that's what's happening now. What happened during the campaign was another thing. Like, it was not.
So you say like that the fact that he might be working with her to have some kind of political compromise is a reasonable thought, because that's what politicians do at this point in time.
Yeah,
Sure.
I agree with many on that. I don't saying it's good or bad. I'm saying that's happening. That, for example, maybe you have heard they are trying to submit someone for the Supreme Court, judge who's very polemical. They are trying to propose him as judge in the Supreme Court, and this judge has had a lot of controversies, and he's not liked in the in his profession. But Milei seems to, when he's asked about it, he gives some terrible arguments in favor of him, and people say, okay, this is what's going on here. Like, who does who benefits from this? And then you make the analysis, and it seems that he may have struck a deal with Christina, but
Sure.
it's all. I mean, we don't have the documents, but it's political analysis.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can't. It's naive to think that he has to be above playing political games. Like for example, during the debates, he was yelling at Bullrich and calling her stupid essentially, and saying you don't have a plan for inflation.
Yeah.
You don't have a plan for inflation. Immediately after, it's going to be him and Massa in the runoff. He's on stage hugging her and making her part of his cabinet, right? And that's, for me, that was the first time I saw a political move, but it was smart and necessary, right?
Yeah, I mean, for some, it was a bit of disappointment. No,
Okay.
not disappointment, but it was a bit, strange, because we were used to the Milei that fought with everybody and didn't compromise. And now, from one day to another, we're seeing him compromise, because before the debate, Milei was calling Bullrich a terrorist, basically, when she was in her youth, with Montoneros and all that kind of stuff in the 70s. And then one day after that, he's hugging her and saying, "Oh, you're my ally." And
Yeah.
politics is like that. And
Politics,
until
yeah.
we have to abandon this idea that Milei is not a politician. No, that he's an outsider. No, he's a politician that searches for power, has gained power, and now is acting like a person with power. He has asked for executive powers from the Congress to him, and those. So he wants more because he wants to implement his program. That's all right. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but he is a political actor that searches for power, wants power, and gets power. That's what I'm
Yeah, and I think that's wise. Is anybody who's seeking leadership is anyone who's seeking that kind of responsibility. Um, it comes, it is responsibility. It comes with dangers. It comes with the chances. Power corrupts, all that kind of thing. So I think it's a wise perspective that you have to just kind of be more objective, right? Like I think it's good that this and this is good, and I think that he's a human being and that he's a politician, and he's like just be objective and realistic about the good and bad of the situation, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Okay. So last question for you. I've seen. I got two questions for you. I've seen in Neuquén, which is a relatively rich city because of the oil industry. So it drives up the price of living here, but also drives up the price of wages. I've seen an increase in dumpster diving and an increase to people walking through like my neighborhood and like carrying open the trash bags and looking for trash, which is inconvenient because I have to go clean it up. I've had two people come to my door knocking for food, and I hadn't had that experience in the past. What is your own perspective on that, on the pain that comes in the short term with trying to cut down government spending?
Well, in my own analysis, we're living in the worst stage of Milei's economic program. I think that the measures that he has taken are mostly correct. With the pieces of legislator that he has sent to Congress, more can be done. But for now, we're living in a slump. What's called an economic slump. We are died. We have already died. Now we're in the slump, and then we're going to grow up. I don't know if that uh, if that economic growth is going to be rapid or slow. It depends on Milei. Depends on how he reduces state restrictions, taxes, all that kind of stuff that prevents economic activity. Yeah, I have noticed what you have noticed in Neuquén as well. It happens here in Buenos Aires. There's more people on the street. There's more people begging for food. Uh, so, and the numbers back it as well. The poverty is rising. Destitute people is also rising. It will depend on Milei if we are gonna have a slow recovery and we have to get used to seeing all of this and maybe ourselves get a lower standard of life.
Right.
But it depends on him mostly because the Argentinian economy, if you let it boom, it will boom. But if you restrict it with all this, with all the legislation, all the restrictions, taxes that it has and it has had been for many years, it will stay like this.
Right.
So he has to get rid of this foreign exchange control, the cepo, the infamous cepo.
Right.
He has to get rid of that.
Which the famous cepo for an American audience, that would be the exchange of dollars and pesos.
Exactly.
Okay.
He has to get rid of that because that will allow the free entry of capital. That will facilitate transactions. It's a permanent damage to the economy to have a control over one of the most important commodities in the market, which is money.
Okay.
So
essentially,
and then also,
sorry, Octavio, just to summarize, you essentially you do think he's taking steps in the right direction, but you do put a lot of responsibility on Milei to personally drive the change all the way, So it's not just a reduction in government spending, but eventually a reduction in government regulations and taxations that causes the economic boom.
Basically, it's that, yeah. Because the public spending reduction is very important, super important. But if you don't back it up with other economic measures like lowering, like I already said, lowering taxes, restrictions, all that kind of stuff, then it's okay. You're transferring resources from the public sphere to the private sphere, but you're not giving the private sphere all the incentives and the help it needs to actually use those resources.
Right.
So Milei has done half of the way.
Right.
He has reduced the public spending, transfer resources to the private sphere. Now he has to liberate the private sphere so the private sphere can boom. If not, boom.
Okay. All right. So last question. A lot of Argentines that I've met want to move to Spain, looking for grandparents who were citizens of Europe so they can move to Spain, perhaps looking to move to Canada, the United States. I know one is moving to Australia. Your personal perspective as a young Argentine, do you want to leave the country, or are you hopeful for the future? And what are your plans for the future?
I'm holding my expectations because I am a bit. I mean, in my articles, many people tell me, yeah, "Hey, you're a bit too optimistic about Milei." Maybe. Then, because I want to live in Argentina, I want to stay in Argentina. I don't want to go live somewhere else. But if I had to, because the economic situation forces me to, then I will live in the country. Of course, I have my family here. It's not easy,
right?
Logistically, emotionally. But I fully understand the people that leave the country or that want to leave the country. If Milei were not the president, I would have already left, probably.
Okay.
Because
I've heard that from more than one person.
It would have demonstrated that this country is never going to change. But maybe it will change now. I do not make predictions, but maybe.
Okay. And what are your current personal plans? Are you studying? Are you working?
I'm studying international relations and political sciences in the University of Palermo.
And do you have political aspirations? Economic? Would you like to be a leader in economic thought? Would you like to work in business?
No, I would like to be an academic, a professor, mostly a professor in the subjects I study. That would be my dream plan, because I like teaching a lot. I've already had some experience with it, and researching, moving Austrian economics forward and the Austrian school thought in other areas. That would be my plan for the future. Yeah.
Okay. No, that sounds good. I've enjoyed reading your articles on Mises, and I was always impressed not only that you've developed a good basis of academic thought on Austrian economics and on libertarianism since 2020, but also you're writing in English and in Spanish, right? Are you translating your own articles?
No, they translate them for me.
Okay, so you start in Spanish, they translate to English?
No, I started in English and then they translate
to Spanish. Okay. No, but that's a cool accomplishment that you're able to do that. So best wishes to you as you continue to build on your own your own thought and your own development thought, and best wishes for the next steps.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and good luck with your project.
Thank you, sir.
Be going good.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on. I think it was a very helpful for me to understand from your perspective, which was fairly well thought out, of how you've seen how things have happened and what you think is important for the next steps for the country as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Octavio, for joining us, and thank you so much for the listeners. I'll speak to you next week.